Okay, we had a rally that fizzled out. I told you that that very well could be the case. Surrounding the gap fills, NASDAQ filled it, S&P tried to, only did it on an intraday basis, and we reversed. We had a rally completely fizzled out. The Dow was down 234 points, down 0.60%. S&P was down 0.77%, down 40 points, and we're down even more there in after hours. NASDAQ down 171 points, down 1%. Russell down 1.41%. Everybody telling us, oh no, the Russell, it's going to go up 40%, and the Russell reverses hard. The Russell is the biggest bull trap. Absolutely amazing. The VIX predicted that we were going to have a down day today. The VIX was correct. The VIX was up 0.5%. Being down initially with the rally, it ended up 0.5%. Again, just quickly, I think NASDAQ's dropping down to this horizontal support. This was a November high, 16,764. The rising trend line from October. I think you're going to find a bottom in there somewhere. And again, in the high 16,700 area to the low 17,000 area, this is where I think we're going to try to bottom. So again, if we break this level, then you're coming back down to this level. You do have horizontal support here, horizontal support here. But again, you're at risk of getting a bigger drop if we lose these levels of support. As I told you, at this trend line, again, you had a shot at a rebound here. You get a decisive break of that trend line, you're going lower. You back up at the top. Bitcoin was bottoming. The stock market was topping. Bitcoin got a big rally back up. I think the NASDAQ will bottom out near the 200 on the daily and in this area, and I think it'll rebound back up to 20,400. Could I be wrong about that? Yes, I could. If we break these levels, then again, you're breaking support, just as we broke support right here. Just telling you, if we bounce here, you got a shot at going back and filling all these gaps and doing what Bitcoin did, getting back above the trend line and forming a massive topping process, but getting a lower high in all likelihood on the NASDAQ, as Bitcoin just did. Right after Bitcoin got that counter trend, it just collapsed in 8 days, 29%. So keep that in mind. I think you're going to see the same thing happen, but I think you're going to get a bear market rally for NASDAQ. I believe NASDAQ is likely topped. If I'm wrong about that, then NASDAQ will go back up and make a higher high and hit the trend line just a little bit higher than this peak right here. Either way, I think you're in a topping process. My guess is that we peaked, and I am now looking for a bottom. The people that are now telling us we're going to crash were extremely bullish back up here. Again, they weren't bearish when I was bearish up here telling you that we were in a topping process over and over again and that we were going to reverse. And I told you on July 11th that I thought we peaked on July 10th. We are going to get this crash. And I told you here, got a shot at a bounce. If we break this level, you're going to go on down. I told you up here, the risk is that we just keep going all the way down and, to this neckline area back to the 200 period moving average, which is what we are doing. And again, we rallied up. We filled the gap on NASDAQ on an intraday basis, but then turned down. Again, we ended down 210 points lower. NASDAQ 100 dropped by 1.16%. Again, this is where we were topping. We had these negative divergences all over the place. The rebound back up, and then the bottom started falling out. And again, we've dropped now nearly 16% on NASDAQ. And I think this is a counter trend rally. Maybe it's done, maybe it's not, but eventually I think we close below the 200 here in this area between 16,700 and 17,300. In that range right there is where I think we're going. Again, we have this neckline, this low over here, 16,973. So I think you're going to bottom down in here. Maybe you take out the neckline and go again to the horizontal support from the 2021 high at 16,007, what was it, 64 or something like that. You're going to get this leg down. Now, again, what causes that? Again, concerns and jitters about recession, tensions in the Middle East, whatever the catalyst may be. Again, I think you're going to bottom. And again, you tend to bottom on bad news. We'll probably get the inflation data, whether good or bad news. Good news, we bottom out. We'll see what happens. We topped on the inflation data previously on good news. We topped on it, even though it was good news there with the CPI. Cool and tame. Well, eventually, I think you come back and fill all these gaps. We did here on this one, 18,441 on an intraday basis today. S&P didn't quite do it. It fell shy of it. But you got all these gaps, and eventually I think you're headed back up here. but I think you're going to bottom down here, and then we'll see what happens. Listen to me. There's no guarantee we go back up and fill these gaps. If my signals turn bullish and remain bullish, you got a shot at it. If my signals turn bullish and then flip back to bearish, then you got, a possible head and shoulders here at this level right here. I think it could evolve into a double top pattern and go back up and hit this level. I think if we are topping, the gaps are likely to fill. You have too many of them, it's likely they're going to fill. I do think we're in a bottoming process, and I think we will see a close in all likelihood before the weekends below the 200 period moving average. If we buy a little bit more time, then maybe we don't. But the 9 count, if we continue to drop, is going to likely take us below that 200 period moving average. Check daily chart. But NVIDIA was down 5% today. It reversed off the 10 period moving average, dropped back below the 100 period moving average. So there's risk of doing this level. And again, NVIDIA could come down to the 75 area or the 200 period here at the 81 or 82 area. And again, we got a hollow red candlestick. You got a violation of this level of support at 97 and broke the trend line. So there's risk that we take out that low and still come lower. And again, if you do, you could sell off. Again, I have this, that we try to rebound here. It could be we go all the way down here and then rebound rather than a right shoulder. You come back up here, get your double top like Bitcoin did. You come back to 126. And you still get a lower high over here, but it could be that we attempt to rally after this into I got a frog in my throat there, to the Fed meeting on September 18th, and then we top. Again, this scenario, and again, I could change that, whereas if we bottom here, continue lower, it may be like that, where we get the Fed pivot, and then that marks the top shortly thereafter or with it. With the pivots in 2007, we went a little bit higher, and then we peaked 2000, I believe it was. We got a little bit of a bounce, so we had already peaked. Again, the Fed pivot lowering rates is bearish. S&P, same thing. Again, we could come down to the 200 period. It's currently at 5,022. Horizontal support, 49.53. We're coming back up. We tried to fill that gap, didn't quite cut the mustard at 53.56. We fell short of it. We did it on an intraday basis with this low right here, but not at the close of that previous bar. So again, I still think we can fall down, or maybe we try to close it, hit the 10 period, and then come down. Whichever way it plays out, I still think we're coming down to the 200. And again, you tap on that, or you move beyond it, one or the other. But I think you're going to bottom. You got your gap filled down here at 5,064. But I think you're going to do that. And then I think the S&P, rather than forming the head and shoulders, I think it's probably going to go to a new high. I could be completely wrong about that if my signals turn bullish and turn back to bearish. But I'm just telling you, I have the guts to tell you exactly what I think. I told you back over here, it was diverging with S&P, and I told you, hey, I think that's a top. We gap lower. The very next day, my signals turned bearish. They had already turned with the warning signs there on NASDAQ. And again, we talked about all of this at great length and detail back up at the top. So I'm looking for a bottom. I think we go lower, but I think you're going to bottom in this area. If you take it out, then again, there's risk of a bigger decline, as I've said. Signals I told you about at the top, the divergences are now playing out. And again, I told you this trend line, we're going back to this trend line for a test. We're either going to overthrow it or we're going to turn at it. And again, we overthrew it. We went just a little bit higher, and we hit this trend line. I told you we had a rising wedge, and the divergences played out. Now we've seen this collapse below the 20-week moving average, so there's still risk of going down to that 200 period and horizontal support. We'll be watching that weekly chart here. We had our head and shoulders on the 60-minute chart. That target's now been reached, but we're probably not at a bottom. I told you we were probably going to go lower. I told you up here we're going to turn right off of this gap resistance area. This gap resistance was our neckline. That happened. I told you the day before we were going to hit that and turn back down, go to a new low. That's exactly what happened. And again, over here, talked about the divergences at the top. Could still see a rebound and try to fill the gap on the S&P. And again, still flirt with these gaps here if we're not done. But again, I still think we're going down to the 200 period. We'll see. If we just roll over and get a bigger sell-off, then look out. If we form a divergence, then we'll see what happens. But again, the rallies are being sold. That's what's happening. You keep getting the rallies, and they're being sold. Rally sold, rally sold, rally sold. They keep being sold. Rally sold back up here, and the rally on lighter volume surrounding Independence Day, the rally sold. Eventually, the rally is going to stop being sold. Eventually, you're going to bottom out. Great Scott, did you hear what I said? Yes, you are going to bottom out. My guess is it's going to be at my target levels in the high 16,000 to low 17,000 area. These divergences in play. So far, the divergences have just given us counter trends on these 60-minute charts. But down here on the MACD, I'm watching to see, okay, are we going to now roll over here and get this divergence and get this final push down and maybe get the 9 count completing come Tuesday? Or do we buy a little bit more time? NASDAQ fill the gap here. You got another gap. You got gap resistance here. You got a gap fill up here. Do we try to get a bigger rebound and then sell off? If we did, it might make those 9 counts go away. But if we do sell off here or attempt to rebound and this high holds and end up coming down here, then again, I'm looking for this divergence to form on the MACDs here on the 60-minute charts. But eventually, I think all these gaps are going to end up getting filled. So I'm looking for a bottom to develop down near the 200 period or horizontal support levels, as I've been talking about. The traders are going to close short positions, go long, and then I think the people that never saw this coming are going to come in with buy the dip. We'll establish a bottom. They tell us, oh, it's over. We're going to have a soft landing. You're going to hear the same they were saying going into the rally. Oh, we're going to have the soft landing. We're not going to have a recession. Indicators are now predicting it. Oh, well, what Powell just did at the press conference, and that's not a set rule. See the an inversion of the yield curve very soon. I didn't check it today, but you're going to see it very, very soon, probably when we rally back up, and that's going to be the next recession signal. Eventually, you're going to see a negative quarter of GDP, and those will be telltale signs that recession is coming quickly. I filled the gap on the 15-minute chart and got the divergence on the 5 and 15-minute chart. We saw sell off and just straight selling. It was a gap and trap on the intraday. Thing with the S&P, now it had a little bear flag that formed. It didn't make it up to the gap fill. We only did it on an intraday basis, not at that close over here. And again, we fell shy of it. The NASDAQ did fill it, 53.45, 46 rounding up. But then we just sold off. We had just straight selling for the rest of the session. Got an inverted hammer here on the 60-minute chart. So we'll see if we attempt to still flirt with these areas, or do we want to get that next leg down? But eventually, I think you're going to see the next leg down going forward. Accounts complete with it or not, I don't know. You're going to see it. Now, we may get a bigger rally back up if we don't get a follow through to today's selling, and the rallies are being sold. I think we'll bottom, and eventually I think S&P will move to new high. We'll see if we get a divergence. We went up here towards extremes, not quite reaching it, and then turned down. We'll see if we still do. So again, we'll be watching to see if we get any kind of rally back up or a follow through to the hours and hours of selling that we had throughout most of the session. S&P had that divergence like NASDAQ, but it fell short of filling that gap. We'll see if we still attempt it or not. Again, 53.46 rounding up. And then we just turned down here on the 15-minute chart. So again, I'll be watching to see if we just continue to get a follow through and move to take out this low, or do we still attempt to go back up and fill that gap? But a big sell-off there after a gap and trap on the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ. Divergence on the 5-minute chart with the S&P 500 5-minute chart. Again, S&P 60-minute chart. I'm still looking for the divergence on the MACD. It turned down. Will it turn back up and end up getting a divergence like that, or does it just roll on over and we get the divergence right here and now? Still has a shot at turning back up. Over here it started to roll over and then it turned back up and we got another reference point. So who knows? We'll see what happens. But I am looking for a divergence. Whether it does something like that or whether it does it immediately, I talked about that yesterday. I'm looking for diversions to complete, but we had straight selling after we had the rally early on in the session. And again, there's distribution going on. If we rally further to attempt to fill the gap, I expect more distribution. Still may try to hit these 50-period moving averages. We didn't reach them. We still may try. However it unfolds, whether immediately or whether we take our time doing it, I'm looking for diversions to form where we come take out this low and move down to test the 200 on the daily chart, and a divergence forms on these 60-minute charts. And again, be watching. Do we buy a little bit more time, or does this selling now escalate and we get a bigger drop? We'll be looking at the session going into tomorrow. And again, is it going to be recession jitters, tensions in the Middle East, whatever the case may be? Do we eventually get these divergences and try to bottom out? Please support the channel with the link directly below that allows me to be able to provide you this information. If you could take a moment to do that, I would really, really appreciate that. If you follow the link, it'll take you to a secured site. Signals have been absolutely amazing. I'm looking for another leg down, but again, once we get it, I think I'll be looking for a bottom at that point. Key support levels. So if you like this information, signals have really been doing a good job. Please support the channel today. Bounced off the 10-period moving average, and again, I told you the VIX often tops before the S&P bottoms. We still may get another low. See the NASDAQ take out the 200 period. We're up 150% here. We got the topping tail. VIX predicted an up day for the S&P 500. We got it. Now the VIX predicted a down day because we dropped more than 20% yesterday, and the VIX predicted a down day for the S&P, and we had a rally. It fizzled out, and the VIX got it right again. Right now the VIX is only up 0.5%, so it's not predicting anything, but it's made these predictions, and they have been correct. Back over here, when we were breaking out the tightening of the Bollinger Bands, and I told you, look, VIX got a breakout and above the 50 period. We saw the S&P peak right when that happened, and I told you about that at the time, and we've seen this decline. We're probably going to move back to the 200 or move under it. NASDAQ will probably move under it. Maybe S&P tags it or takes it out. Again, the VIX has just been nailing the signals, basing that on historical data. And if you just crunch the numbers, VIX does a pretty good job of predicting moves. Now, when you go parabolic, you start throwing that out the window. And I told you sometimes signals don't play out, but this move, more often than not, they have. So again, usually when you go parabolic, it becomes less likely that the signals play out. But pretty amazing signals on the VIX, as we've been talking about. And I think the S&P will move to a new low. I think the VIX has probably already peaked. And again, when you see them diverge from one another, you'll probably have your S&P 500 bottom. And I think eventually we will go back up and fill some of these gaps, but I think we're going to test the 200 or move beyond it. And again, we've been talking about that at great length and detail. I just want to share something I've been thinking through and thinking about, and that is the CPI data next week. We're going to get the PPI on Tuesday. We're going to get the CPI on Wednesday. And again, I think it's very possible that we could sell off into making new lows into the CPI data. I think that is very, very possible. And if we just zoom out here, I think you could move back to the 200. And let me just bring it up here. Back towards the 200 or beyond the 200, you have this low down here, 49.53. You've got horizontal support. You've got the gap here at 4,064. You've got your 200 here at about 5,022 or 3 or so. And again, I think you can be moving back down there. I think this is a counter trend. We attempted to fill the gap. We did it on an intraday basis with this low, but we didn't do it on a closing basis. We were just shy of it. NASDAQ did. But again, I told you to be watching this gap and gap resistance. The 10-period moving average, we didn't hit it. NVIDIA turned right off the 10-period moving average today and turned right back down after rallying into it. And I think that we're in a bottoming process. I think we're going to get another dump down here, as I've said, and rally is now failing. If we manage to save it, again, you still have the gap fill, and you got the gap fill up here. So you still have these levels, but again, it looks like we're reversing. We're getting the rally on lighter volume, and then you're seeing more distribution. We're seeing it over and over again. And again, all over social media, oh, we bottom, here we go. And again, it's likely that we're not going to bottom until we get down in here somewhere, in all likelihood, unless my signals, which are correct, turn back to bullish. 9 count, I told you the 9 count, we can go a little higher. NASDAQ peaked with the 9 count. S&P, we went a little bit higher. NASDAQ peaked with it, diverged from one another, which I've talked to you about over and over again, that they often diverge at turning points. And if we bottom out here, we may go up to a new high and form a massive double top, and it might be diverge again. Should we bottom, and if NASDAQ and S&P do what Bitcoin did, they moved Bitcoin at the July low, moved back to the 200, took it out. I think NASDAQ will. S&P might tag it, but if we take it out on NASDAQ or even S&P, you can move back up. And Bitcoin went back up, got back above the broken trend line, and tested the highs. P can do that as well. Most people look at Bitcoin and the stock market. Usually they're in one or the other, and I look at both. I trade both of those. constantly looking at them because I know they have a positive correlation. And right now, the market is following Bitcoin. They had a negative correlation. Now it's back to a bullish correlation between the two of them. Short-term decoupling. Market bounces here. We might see an attempted rebound with Bitcoin, but it's still at risk of going lower. You got a 5 of a 9 here, okay, on S&P daily. You got a 5 of a 9 on S&P. You got a 5 of a 9 on NASDAQ. You got a 5 of a 9 on NVIDIA. You got a 5 of a 9 on the semiconductor ETF. Okay, these are the things driving the market. If we complete a 9 count, guess what day? I'll give you a guess. Well, guess what day? If the 9 count completes, it completes on the day we get the CPI data. Did I already let the cat out of the bag and say that earlier? Probably. Nevertheless, I digress. You got a shot that if we get 4 more sessions of each bar being below the bar from 4 bars ago, that you can get a 9 count down here, and then we can get a massive rally back up to fill these gaps. I think the S&P gapping lower here is probably going to end up moving to a new high. Could I be wrong about that? You betcha. Top may be in on the S&P. We don't have to fill the gap. Guess is we're probably going to see that happen, and we're probably going to carve out a bottom here. This hype and talk, oh, the Fed's going to now do an emergency cut, and then the markets are going to go, and we're in a topping process. So just wanted to continue to talk about that. Again, I expect that we're probably going to bottom in this area in all likelihood. I told you had a shot at it up here at the 100 period moving average. If NASDAQ could bounce off the trend line, NASDAQ decisively broke it. Told you if that happens, you're likely coming down here. It's all about support and resistance. It's not about seeing into the future. Look, it's about support and resistance, mathematically based indicators, and you can't bust them up. You're going to try to bust them back down. Again, we're likely going to take out this low, as I've been saying, and I believe that the rally that we have right now is a counter trend rally. But you got a 5 of a 9. No guarantee the count completes, but if it does, then you've got possible bottom or a bounce that could happen if the count completes in the next 4 trading sessions. You have to excuse me. I think I said it would complete. It would be Wednesday. We get the CPI Wednesday. It completes on Tuesday with the PPI data. Pardon me. That is a day that the 9 count, if we continue to close below the bar from 4 bars ago, every bar, that we would have 6 and 7 bars on Thursday, Friday, Monday, and Tuesday. We would get bars 8 and 9. And then Wednesday would be the CPI. So I stand corrected. Sorry about that. It's the PPI that we get on Tuesday with the 9 count. Sorry for getting those days mixed up on you. So to be clear, let me repeat. Again, we're going to get the PPI on Tuesday, the CPI on Wednesday, complete the 9 count if it does complete on Tuesday when we get the PPI data that day before the market opens. The day after the 9 count will be the CPI. I apologize, that is the 14th. We completed bar 5, so we need 4 more buyers Thursday, Friday, Monday, and Tuesday. So sorry about that for the confusion. Which day the 9 count completed. It is going to be Tuesday the 13th. So I just want to make that clear. Next week we'll get the inflation data. That could give us a bottom. Sell-off continues, and again we complete divergences as I've been talking about. Again, NASDAQ, back when we had that, we were above the upper Bollinger Band, and I told you we were getting we told you before we got the 9 count, we were going to get it. I warned you. We were getting sell signals, and we were slamming into those major trend lines of resistance. I told you I thought we were going to see a top there. I told you we could sell off at the CPI rally and close back below the upper Bollinger Band before it happened. The CPI data, we ended up selling off. It marked a top. I told you on the 11th, we topped on the 10th. I told you on the 11th that I believe that that is a major top for the NASDAQ. A 9-9 sell signal up here, and I talked about the week before we had a 9 count sell signal in the weekly time frame. For the month, we were getting a 9 count sell signal in the monthly time frame, and I talked about all of this. I warned you we were going higher. My signals remain bullish, but we were going higher on lighter volume, and then we hit that upper Bollinger Band, and boom, got the reversal, and we got the 500-point drop on NASDAQ. I told you we were going to rally back up to the 78.6 Fibonacci of that decline. We did it right on the nose. And I told you we were going to see the bottom fall out of the NASDAQ with those divergences playing out in the weekly time frame. And this happened. We've now dropped nearly 16%, 15.72%. We were told this wasn't going to happen. The AI is here, and there's this market, there's no way it's going down. The market is in a topping process. Eventually we're going to bottom. Listen to me. Eventually we're going to bottom, probably below the 200 period here on NASDAQ and go back up and likely come back to 20,400 and fill this gap. I believe that's likely going to be the case. I think we're going to go back and test this high in all likelihood. We don't have to. I could be wrong, but you got a boatload of gaps here that we're going to likely end up going back up and filling. We did fill this one today on an intraday basis. We did fill it. Here, we didn't close above it, but we did tag it on an intraday basis. S&P didn't tag it. It only tagged the intraday low of the previous bar. But regardless, we sold off. We had a rally. It totally fizzled out. Here you got a 5 of a 9. So again, if we continue to drop below the 200, if we continue to drop to its horizontal support and get these 9 counts completing next Tuesday with that inflation data, the PPI wholesale inflation and the CPI, the consumer price index, on Wednesday. What I'm trying to tell you is we could be setting up, if we continue to see the 9 count play out, closing below the 200. We dropped below it, but we didn't close below it. We rebounded off of it. I think you'll close below it, come down here to this this high 16,000 area, just right around 17,000, and maybe even take it out. We'll see what happens. I told you between 16,700 and some change and low 17,000 area, that's where major support is. So again, I'll be looking at these areas at the high 16,000 area, the low 17,000 area for a possible bottom. The 200's down here, the 50's still up here. It's curling down, but there's no death cross. You know, by the way, Bitcoin's about to get a death cross, and Bitcoin's likely topped. All these people, you know, cryptocurrencies now collapsed by 33%, and all these cryptocurrency people telling us, oh, Bitcoin's going to get a bearish cross this week, but that's really bullish. They're talking about, oh, it's a big bear trap. The sell-off, it's a bear trap. They say that every time because they didn't see the sell-off coming, and we've collapsed. About how the bull trap was back up above 69,000 at the 70,000 level. Those rallies keep getting sold. Those people are underwater. Those people are trapped. Bears doing great. It's collapsed 33%. Probably going to try to rally back up because listen to me carefully. Bitcoin and the market are now moving back into a positive correlation, and which I told you was eventually going to happen. So Bitcoin could rally back up, probably not going to make a new high. All my signals turn back to bullish. Signals are bearish in the weekly time frame and the daily time frame for Bitcoin, and it's getting a death cross. So again, bulls have their work cut out for them. But the point is that Bitcoin tops, being the asset with the most volatility, that it tops first. Then again, S&P and NASDAQ are likely going to top too. But I think that they're going to come down here, and maybe we hit this level or overthrow it a little bit. And I've talked about these levels of support. But I think NASDAQ will eventually come back up here and do what Bitcoin did. It came back up. It got back above the broken trend line. It got back above the moving averages. And then it got a lower high, and it collapsed. And Bitcoin in 8 days just dropped. It just dropped 29% in 8 days. And from the peak, it's down 33%, and because it keeps the rallies keep getting sold. And that's why these people telling us that the sell-off, it's a bear trap. One's trapped right now are the bulls. And when we go back up with the stock market, which, did you hear me? Great Scott, did you hear what I said? When Bitcoin bottoms, or when NASDAQ and S&P bottom and go back up, think about that. That means I'm saying there's going to be a bottom here. We're going to see my signals turn back to bullish and eventually going to get a rally. It could be a feeble rally and get a head and shoulders here, or it could be a lopsided head and shoulders, or more of really evolving into a double top pattern, kind of like what Bitcoin's got. But again, the 50 is very far away from the 200, so you're probably going to close below this level and then gravitate back towards the 50 and probably end up getting above it and filling all these gaps. My signals will turn back to bullish, and we'll probably have a massive bear market rally. I believe NASDAQ topped over here. I don't believe it's going to exceed that high. Could I be wrong? Well, if we clear this level, I do believe we're going back to 20,400 in all likelihood. Wrong about that? If my signals don't turn back to bullish, or if they turn bullish and we fall short of that and they turn back to bearish, then yeah, if you stall and we get the head and shoulders here at this level, then maybe that's the case. I'm telling you, as we're going into the CPI data next week, and it's going to be with the PPI on Tuesday, the CPI on Wednesday, but on Tuesday we should complete 9 counts if the selling continues and we close below the bar from 4 bars ago. Every bar, you got a 5 of a 9 here. If we continue to slide, you can complete a 9 count. This 9 count marked the top. Okay. Sometimes you go a little higher. This 9 count we went just a fraction higher, and then we had a pullback and a correction. Here we went a little higher, then we pulled back. And you actually got a 9 count, but it did mark a pullback. Count is going to mark a reversal or a bounce or a bottom. And so, again, I think you're going to get a bottom here, and I think that can happen with the CPI data. If I am correct, we should do what Bitcoin did, drop below the 200 and then rebound back up really hard, but bottom out here over a few days, but get a bottoming tail, and then that's exactly what Bitcoin did. 5 of a 9 here, a 5 of a 9 on the S&P. No guarantee these counts complete. If they do, then again, I think you drop below these 200 period moving averages and come to horizontal support. But I'm watching a 5 of a 9. We could get a big sell-off. Could be recession fears. Could be, again, tensions in the Middle East. Combination of things. I think you're going to bottom after another leg down. I think you're going to get a massive bear market rally for NASDAQ. I still think S&P's got a shot at new highs. I could be wrong on that. Still think it's going to form a larger divergence with NASDAQ and go make a new high because the gap was at the very top. The gap was not at the very top with NASDAQ over here. It was after we already saw the sell-off at lower high, and often they diverge. So I don't think NASDAQ will move to new high, but I think it will come close to it. I think you get a bottom here, likely carving out in the days ahead. I'll share with you a 5 of a 9 going into the CPI data and the PPI data next week. I think you'll see the same thing with the semiconductors. Sharply lower today. Again, the rally fizzled out. We tried to fill the gap and couldn't do it. This is a semiconductor ETF. Again, we had the 9-9 signal here. Or, actually, the 9 count, it was a 9-9 over here, and then with the pullback, but it was not perfected. I told you I thought we topped back over here on the 11th. I was correct. Because of the bearish engulfing, back-to-back bearish engulfings, it formed a divergence on the RSI, the MACD, and we dropped below those upper Bollinger Bands. And again, we've moved into free fall back to the 200. We're right here at support. We're probably going to see the semiconductors take this level out in all likelihood. I don't know how low we go, but you got a 5 of a 9 on the semiconductors. So again, no guarantee these counts play out. Over here, you only got to, well, you did complete it. It just wasn't perfected. But back over here at the peak, you only got to bar 7, and then it didn't play out, and you started going sideways. So again, no guarantee it plays out. My guess is that it's going to, in all likelihood. So you need 4 more bars here on the semiconductors. And again, why am I talking about the semiconductors? Why am I talking about NVIDIA? You want to know which way the market's going? Look at the semiconductors. Look at NVIDIA. When I call the top back over here with this divergence, and again, told you it was diverging with NVIDIA. Was NASDAQ, I told you we were likely forming a top, and I had the guts to tell you, hey, when we had this sell-off and this reversal on the 11th, I told you, hey, I think this is the top here, and I told you on the 11th that I thought that the day before was the top on NASDAQ on the 10th. People don't have the guts to do that. Now people are, being very bearish after the move's been made. They were bearish up here when I was calling these tops. Telling you, I have the guts to tell you what I think. I think we're going to form a bottom down here, and then my signals are going to get back to bullish. It's time for me to flip the trade. You do what you want, but it's going to be time for me to flip the trade, close my shorts because I was right, and then go back to long, and I'll say the same thing I said over here. My signals remain bullish. When my signals turn back to bullish, you're going to hear me say, my signals remain bullish. We're going back to fill the gaps. Over here, I said, my signals remain bullish. We're going up to test the trend lines in the weekly time frame. I say the same thing. Because I believe a bottom is likely going to form here in all likelihood. If it doesn't, if NASDAQ takes out the 17,000 area, then you got another trend line way down, much lower. So again, it's about support and resistance. It's not about baloney, predicting the future. It's about support and resistance and mathematically based indicators, okay? I think S&P is going to move towards the 200 and maybe take it out or tag it. I think NASDAQ will collapse below it. I think the semiconductors will get a solid push below it, move below horizontal support. I think NVIDIA, if it continues lower, it can move back towards this level right here, just below the 200, and again, do what Bitcoin did. That's what Bitcoin did. Went back and it tested support. Bitcoin took it out a little bit, and then it got a rebound and went all the way back up. Eventually, I think you're going back right here to 126. I think NVIDIA is going to come back up here and not form a head and shoulders, but form a double top. Here we had a 9-9. Went a little bit higher, and then it played out, and it's played out. Again, sometimes you go a little higher, sometimes you turn like NASDAQ did immediately, but again, the signals have been absolutely, oops, sorry about that, wrong button, but you're getting a 5 of a 9. If we continue to close below the bars from 4 bars ago, and again, May not, but my guess is that we're going to. I think you're headed back here to 90 or to 75 here at the horizontal support of 75, and the 200 period moving average is right around the 81 area, pushing 82. So this is where I think we're headed with NVIDIA, and then I think you can bottom, and then I think you're going all the way back up to 126, probably going to overthrow it, test these highs, but not move to a new high. I believe NVIDIA peaked over here on June 20th, as I've been saying, and again, that's why I believe that the S&P or NASDAQ was peaking at the time when I told you, but again, an extremely unpopular thing to say. Again, I believe the market is in a topping process. I believe we're going to bottom in this area, and I think it's going to rally back up. People so stinking complacent. And again, a topping process takes time to form.